Welcome, everybody, to the Distilled Security podcast. My name is Justin Lieblein, and I'm joined by Rick Yoakum and Joe Wynn. We're glad to have you here. We're doing a little bit different format where we're doing more conversational based and around interesting security topics while having a little sip of some good refreshments and everything. So with this type of format, what we're aiming to do is just get into, good discussions, maybe some arguments along the way. We're also looking to kind of learn. Some of us will be more familiar than others on certain topics. But no matter what, we're just looking to have a really good conversation. And we've been friends for many years and everything. So it's been quite a while. But to start off with, I figured what we do is just kind of introduce ourselves since this is episode 1. We'll go through and just give a little bit of background and history and just start from there. Rick, you want to start us off?
Sure. So, hey guys. It's weird introducing myself to you.
I know.
But I'm Rick Yoakum. So I've been doing security and compliance stuff for like 20-ish years.
Okay.
I actually started, the high school I went to hired me to do computer stuff, which was pretty cool.
After you hacked them.
Well, there was a little bit. I think there was a bit of hey, this kid likes computers. Let's harness this energy towards something less destructive than breaking everything.
Isn't that all with boys? Like, you have to direct them to something worthwhile.
Yeah, so there was a little bit of shenanigans up front, and then a lot of me stopping other people's shenanigans, which is cool. And then went to Duquesne. Did kind of like a combo IT business degrees. After that, worked for Deloitte for a handful of years, both on the audit side and then on the kind of security consulting side.
Okay.
Then I moved to Del Monte, where I worked with that security program for probably 5 or 6 years. Fast forward to the Federal Home Loan Bank system, doing compliance stuff for a year. Then global GRC director for Black Box Network Services for a handful of years. And then my good friend, I don't know if you know him, Justin Lieblein, introduced me to this company called Trusted Sec, and that's where I am today.
Okay, great. Yeah. Joe, you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So I too went to Duquesne, and we've been friends
the minority right now.
Yeah. But we'll get into that later when we hit the topic of career.
Right.
So I currently run a cybersecurity engineering firm, and no, we'll get to that.
Okay.
But years ago, I've always kind of, when I was a kid, was like, I want to have a company. But did I really even know what that meant? I had no idea. And so I went through everything and had an affinity for computers in middle school and high school as well. I remember one time I was sitting there writing this stuff on a piece of paper, and my 8th grade teacher came over and asked me what I was doing, and I was writing basic code by hand so I could later go home and type it in on my Texas Instruments TI-994A. And it was just going to draw a picture of like a Santa Claus. So I still remember that. And so that kind of was like my first having fun with figuring out that I really enjoy computer stuff.
That's a cool memory.
And I always liked the idea of like spy movies and making things do what you don't want it to do, like lockpicking. You open it up without a key and all the stuff. So I always enjoyed that, and got into high school, just kept learning more and more about computer stuff. Went to Duquesne I wasn't going to go for computer science, but I was going to go for physics and engineering eventually, and ended up having my comp sci teacher for one of my classes talked me into switching over. Okay. Because I was, I took to it. I'm not a coder now, but I did okay then.
Mm-hmm.
So I just started working while in Duquesne for the computer department, and all kinds of cool stuff you can figure out on campus, and also opportunities to make things work in the way they shouldn't work. So, hypothetically, you could even pipe a microphone from a computer on one side of campus to the speaker of one on the other side of campus. So
I remember working in the computer labs at Duquesne. A lot of opportunities to both do and shut down shenanigans there too.
Yeah. So that was cool. So I got out of Duquesne, got a job, and I worked there for like 20 years. Kind of went up through the ranks of being on the help desk to doing sysadmin stuff,
That's
doing
where we met
database
and
admin
everything.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually, and I was probably there for like 10 years by that time.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And so, but nobody was there, didn't even have like a specialized security department. It was just something people did the best they could. And so things would come along, and eventually I was able to create a one-man shop and move out of like traditional IT into still in IT, but it was a security department.
Yeah.
And then was able to grow that up. Sarbanes-Oxley was the trigger for them to want to invest in it. So then eventually, got
If
a
only
security
people
title.
knew the rigor that we have to go through today for regulation and compliance.
Right.
It was
yeah.
huge at the time, though. There were pitchforks and fire.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. And that stuff was crazy back then, but there was no like control frameworks that people were trying to intentionally follow.
Yeah.
So
your standard like
Like, what
fuzzy
are
legal
these
language.
access control reviews? I have no idea.
right, yeah. An audit meant a deep audit meant Anderson Consulting coming in and running some stuff on your Novell server. I remember that. I'm like, why are we paying this much money? How we can do this ourselves? Let's just do this.
Right.
And so anyway, so that's how kind of got into official security, and then kind of grew up from there. And after working there for a while, got recruited away, went to another company for a year, and kind of started thinking back about how I always wanted to start a company, and like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And so the piece I had to figure out is, well, how do I leave and also go do that and get it started? And I started a company called WinSecure. It was just me.
That's a great name.
Yeah.
That's a really good name.
And then eventually I met up with my co-founder, John Ziola, and we formed CISO. And I met him during BSides Pittsburgh organization meetings. And so, which you're on now.
Yeah.
And anyway, so long story shorter, is kind of always doing something security related, and finally got into leadership, and then wanted to really bring that to other companies, and companies that can't afford the luxury I had of being able to build a dozen people or so team, and that was a lot of fun. So now we can do that for lots of companies that just can't do it.
Yeah. And then you don't have all the politics above you to do some of the stuff. You still have to report to a customer, but sometimes it's a little less on, like, if you think it's the right way, you just kind of
and sometimes sometimes you don't have customers anymore that you choose not to have.
Exactly.
And you go find other ones. So
all right, my turn. So so I started off, I think, tinkering in around high school. So my dad actually started up an ISP. He was the first one here in north of Pittsburgh called FYI Networks. Yeah. And I remember he turned our garage into basically an internet service provider hub. We had a T1 line in 1992 coming into our house, type of thing. When everybody was hearing modems, so we had this T1 line coming in, and it was blazing fast. There really wasn't stuff out on the internet, but it was really fast, for us. That 1.44 megabytes, type of thing. But yeah, he set up a internet service provider right at our house, and it was really exciting to actually see him kind of start that, grow that, get he got a lien on the house, a loan to, do this thing and everything. And it was really cool. I remember, we had 10 modems at first, and he started off, remember him being so excited when first one came in, like, we have one customer dialed in, type of thing. And within, I think, months, it got to, we have one open. Nope, it's gone. And it was always that battle of expanding, and then it were all the modem wars, like the V90, the X52, there was different models, and depending on who, like, was it Dell or Compaq, they had different modems that they sold.
So this was a T1 of phone lines, not a T1 of network, or?
Yeah, T1 was a direct line coming in, but it was 1.44 megabytes, I think, was the speed and everything. It was a direct line, with that. But we were serving customers through modems, so they were dialing in through their POTS lines
to connect to you to get out.
And then the pipe out was that T1 line and everything. So, but we got to obviously be on the T1 line.
So you had
with
all those phone lines plus the T1 line.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. But yeah, it was really cool. It definitely left an impression on me. Just the the successes and struggles that having your own company and everything. I remember sitting in. We didn't have AC until I was like 16, 17 years old. And remember, our first few months, they didn't have like a machine to do letters. So we were all there licking, the envelopes to put all the bills into all the customers.
Family mail room.
Oh, yeah. It was child labor at its best type of thing. And we're just all pouring down sweat. We could have probably just used our sweat to like seal it.
There you go. So you were Bill.com.
Huh?
You were Bill.com.
Yeah, exactly, right? But yeah, so, and out of high school, like I had some programming classes like C++. Actually, Mars Area High School had that growing up and everything.
Awesome.
And I went to intern at a company, but didn't go to college. I went to intern at a company, and they're like, oh, yeah, you're pretty good, like, with this. And they offered me a job, with that. And I still remember, I had the letter somewhere. It was like 22 grand a year, like was my first salaried job. And I was so excited.
It feels like $1 million zillion.
Yeah, I'm like, all right. I forget what the hourly rate was, but it was a little bit above what I was making at that point. But now I'm looking at that, I'm like 22 grand, I'm not even sure I'd do a project for enough. But yeah, so, and kind of went up through programming, but it was around 2002, I was basically doing some introspection on like whatever I want to do. Like I'm doing this programming job, and I really like security because it's the constant challenge of it. Just that kind of, it's not you do it once and done. It's always trying to keep up with the bad guys and all that stuff and everything. So I decided to go and make a switch to security, and I had that decision like, do I go to college or go a certification route? And I decided to go the certification route. One, it's faster and cheaper, type of thing. But also, it was less time. So I was like, well, I won't waste anything doing this. And I got my CEH and my CIS, way back in the day, and then went into consulting a little bit at that first, and then came back and I did GRC at Diebold. I ran the security program at giftcards.com before they got sold off. And then went to Trusted Sec because I'm good friends with Dave Kennedy, and he needed somebody from the PCI GRC world and everything. At the time, only Alex Hammerstone was there. And it was great. I was there, I don't know, 5 years or something like that. I have to look at LinkedIn, to figure out my history.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, and then a few years ago, I wanted to kind of break out my own. I started up a Pisky. I really wanted to bring kind of the GRC tooling market to small to mid-sized organizations. It's been way longer than what I wanted it to be. Just trying to struggle or do the consulting and the development, because I've had some developers here and there, but it's still a lot on my shoulders and everything.
Sure.
But yeah, that's where I'm at today, doing some consulting, helping customers out, and that is what it is. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So why don't we dive into some topics here?
Yeah.
Well,
and everything.
I know we're going to talk about one topic,
Okay.
but you brought something up in your intro, so maybe we just switch right
Start
to that.
there.
And it's the career. Is college worth it? Want to pop into that one first?
Sure. No.
No?
Oh,
Okay. Yeah.
No, you don't. Or no,
No, no's the answer.
Yeah, right.
No to school.
So I mean, my personal way, obviously, I'm slightly biased, into this, but there are so many topics nowadays that you really don't need a college degree on. You almost need more of an apprenticeship, into it to. Like, you still need the experience and the actual real world with that. And even, like, I've hired several college graduates, and they come to, like, work for me, and I almost have to retrain them, to,
Absolutely.
get to learn what the job is and everything. I remember specifically, I think it was from Pitt, I hired somebody, and one of my questions, from an interview is, tell me what you think the biggest threat to organizations are right now, from just a holistic perspective. And it's meant to be an open-ended question, just to see where their mind at. And I forget when, this was late it was like 2015, 2014, 2015. And he answered slammer worm, like worms and everything. I'm like, worms? like, what do you mean worms? So like, that's like mid 2000s. It's like, oh, we just learned about them in school. I'm like, really? like, that's not a thing anymore.
So that wasn't the right answer.
Yeah, no. Yeah. In an open-ended, nothing's the wrong answer. That was wrong. You know.
No wrong answers, but there are some not great answers.
Yeah, but it just shows goes to show like the curriculum was way outdated.
Sure.
You know, from that. So you almost have to kind of retrain. It's like, hey, email is a bigger threat than than any worm nowadays. You know, type of thing.
And we should talk about threats later and what the biggest ones are.
But okay.
Let's go back to this. So it's so with respect to college or jump right into it. What's some pros for going to college?
So I think there are some academic learning that you have to do to go through that. So you can't get out of college to become a lawyer. You can't get out of college to become a doctor. You know, those are licensed things that require degrees into that. Now, you could do an argument of whether a degree is actually, worth, like you need a degree to actually do that. Like I've made the argument before that, like a general MD, like your local office and everything like that, that could be an apprenticeship. Like,
sure.
What do? They go through like, my throat hurts. Okay, I'll swab you and throw it in a test, and yeah, you got strep, so doctor prescribed whatever,
Sure.
or something really hurts, let me refer you to a specialist. Like, that's all they're doing.
And you can do that on a video call now.
Yeah,
and it's probably
they're essentially an operator.
It's probably just a deep fake
it's just AI
now doing it too. You don't even know it's a real doctor.
Right.
Yeah, and so I guess, into that context there, you can have an argument of whether it is, that's required, but you need that.
It's legally required now, but
exactly.
do you need that kind of level of training?
Right. Now, obviously, somebody going into open heart surgery, like, they better have training at the wazoo, type of thing. I'm not putting myself on the table,
But you ran yourself through a series of, like, focused studies when you knocked out all those certs,
I mean,
right?
and Barnes & Nobles was my friend. If I didn't know a topic, I went to go buy a book and learn it, type of thing. Yeah, you can't just stay still and say, okay, I'm not going to get educated. Like,
that's almost like that personal MBA or whatever they call it, where it's like, well, I'm just going to, go read all the MBA books.
Well, and that's what is it? Goodwill Hunting. When he goes in it, it's like, there's two certainties. One, you're going to realize that you wake up and you could have had, your entire education for $1.50 late charges, with that, which is true, like there's nothing needed to be sitting in a classroom. I mean, I think, and we've had losses from the educational system, I think it was really there to test you from a reason standpoint, and we've really lost that.
From an ability to execute logic and patterns
exactly.
and think through.
Yeah, and go up against adverse challenges of your thought process, and I don't think that's really there anymore. Like, it's not that you're going to challenge and you have to defend yourself or, make up good arguments on a premise or a thesis or whatever it is. Like, that's what I think college was like 100 years ago, type of thing, where they basically made you sharp and, honed on utilizing the knowledge that you had to, come up and defend it well. Now it's more like, can you regurgitate it right, type of thing.
Well, very interesting is 100 years ago, the only place to go to collaborate like that was either university or the bar. And so you couldn't just get online and have a meaningful discussion
or find the information
discourse on anything. But today, you can have those without having to go to school.
I will say what the degree did for me had very little to do with the degree itself. It had a lot more to do with some professors and relationships with them who I still maintain relationships with. And other students who I'll pull on, not necessarily for anything related to my degree, right? But if I have a weird question on government stuff, I have a friend who is in poli-sci, and I'll ask him about that weird question about government stuff. There are things like that. The other thing that's probably more important.
The forming of relationships is really what you're...
Yeah, the social aspect of it. Because I think a lot of people at that part of their lives, if you take kind of a typical route in terms of when you go to school,
Yeah.
you're in these sort of formative years, and a lot of people are out of the home for the first time, or
Yep.
partially out of the home for the first time, and all that stuff. So I think can be some good stuff there. But from a career perspective, what it did was I think it got me the internship at Deloitte, which to a large extent for me was that formative apprenticeship, truly through the ringer for the first bunch of years. And that's what helped sharpen my thinking. And I don't know that I would have naturally got, like, say, that internship had I not
I don't think you would have at
Right.
the time you went, because Deloitte
Absolutely.
was like 4-year degree.
Right.
In fact, I experienced that. I graduated in 1999.
Yeah.
And when I was trying to hop around, like, I was getting stuff like, "Oh yeah, you're well qualified, but you forgot to put your college degree on your resume."
I didn't forget.
No, I didn't forget. They're like, "Oh well, it's required," type of thing.
But I wonder if that's changed now, right? I
I
wonder
think
if
it has, yeah. At least for a lot of tech jobs. Every position that I hire for, I throw that degree out the window and everything. Now it might be a good like tiebreaker, type of thing. Like, people are basically equal, and one's gone to college, one hasn't.
Even then, I want to know, like, what'd you do with those years?
Right?
Yeah,
That would be my
That's
question.
true. Type of thing. But I'm looking for anything that'd be a tiebreaker at that point. But
Yeah.
there's usually never like a 1-for-1. There's good quality and bad, or worse qualities. I wouldn't say bad. But yeah.
And I agree with you, and I want to hear your thoughts on this too. But like me having hired a number of people in the past, when I'm advising people on hiring practices, I basically tell them the same thing you do. Is like, look, if your HR department will let you do it, right? Get rid of the degree requirement or potentially certification requirements, because there's a lot of people out there that are potentially super skilled. Now, you need to have some education. You need to be good at the thing, right? But you don't necessarily need just this one thing or just this other thing or this combination of things to do the job. And I actually think a lot of people that are super good or super driven and have good brains but just haven't had that experience yet and could get there very quickly aren't given opportunities, because there's kind of these artificial barriers that don't really serve anyone. So,
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, I agree with all of that, and I want to get to the cons of going to college as well in a second.
Yeah.
But just to sum up some of those things, well-rounded. I don't know that I've encountered people who haven't gone and immersed themselves in like that college environment. It drives a more social interaction they wouldn't have otherwise gotten. Now, that's not applies to everybody.
Right.
Like, you'll just go up to anybody in any place and just start talking to them.
I've experienced a number of college parties, and I've never went to college.
See, yeah.
They'll let you in.
Yeah, right.
They'll let you in.
And opportunities to collaborate, you were hitting on that you never would have gotten any other place. Right. And some places, just some jobs just require it. Yeah. But the other part is, unless you're a unicorn, and I was doing a little bit of like superficial research on this before we got here, was higher earning potential. Unless you're, but I think there's unicorns out there who will do that. If you look across the general populace, I think people who come out of college will get a higher level. They won't hit a certain ceiling.
You'll
other
start,
people.
That early start at a higher thing, assuming you make the jumps at regular intervals, is going to get you to a higher place overall, potentially.
Yeah, but that leads into my first con.
Well, especially the government, they have a very strict, qualification hiring process.
And they're not a small employer.
No, they aren't. Like 1/5 of the economy or something like that.
But you also get capped at a salary range there really fast. So you got to go to college, which costs a ton. Plus, if you go to the government job, then you may not get as high of an earning potential. And then what happens during those 4 years? So a great argument for not going to college is it costs a ton, and you could actually be earning during those 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you can find yourself into, how do you become that unicorn who doesn't need to go to college to still get the job? I'm thinking like entrepreneur level person.
Right.
Now you kind of break that mold. What do you think?
I think that's probably true, but it's probably also true that we are all weirdos and that we've been doing like IT and security stuff like almost from the jump. And I do think there's probably a large number of people that try a thing in college and then go, this isn't for me. Well, to an extent,
I think
that was your
most
story
people,
in
isn't
Duquesne,
it?
right?
Right. Well, even before the jump, like you were saying in high school, we all
Right.
took like some sort of computer stuff. Well, nobody else was.
But there's people who's like, oh yeah, I'm going into biomed, and then all of a sudden, now I'm going to do landscaping instead, or whatever, right? I mean, it happens all the time because people start doing the formal training in whatever that discipline is, and then they shift.
Right.
So, yeah, I could see that.
A promise of money, and then they're like, I can't do 8 hours.
I could see that going either way.
Yeah.
But you could theoretically figure that out doing the actual work too, potentially.
That's the argument for apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Like that's a low risk tryout,
Right.
and you don't have to sign up for college to do that. I mean, most college you spend 2 years just doing general courses, and then you start getting into whatever your elective degree is, type of thing. The apprenticeship is like, okay, do I like it or not, and then you can drop out with and you get paid,
Right.
Well, can I ask you a question that I was asked just today? I was talking to somebody, another professional executive at another company, and he said, schools, college is leaving out. He said his son's roommate is coming out with a security degree.
Yeah.
What should he do? And this is always a perplexing answer because you think you went to school for all these years in cybersecurity, you should come out and get a job in cybersecurity. But I want to know who's hiring a job in cybersecurity for an entry-level person coming right out of college.
No, I don't care what you're doing. The vast majority of people are starting to help.
Is that an overnight SOC position?
That was one of the things I said. There's companies that'll hire you to be a SOC analyst so you can figure things out. And part of the answer I gave was relating it to, would you hire somebody who's never lived in a house nor built a house to come and put a home security system in?
Right.
They'd have no idea, no concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
So would you bring somebody into your company and have them jump right in? Well, if it's a PNC level cybersecurity team with hundreds and hundreds of people, well, then there's probably a place for somebody to come in because they actually have the training program, the apprenticeship program. And so it's built into the companies. You can get the companies to do that, but I'm not going to be able to bring somebody in right out and make them super productive right away. But have you seen too much of that?
Well, and that's the thing, smaller companies, they can't afford bad employees and not even necessarily
inexperienced.
Well, it could be bad or inexperienced, because even if you're an employee that doesn't do anything, you can mix into a larger crowd and not have that much of an impact. It really depends on your immediate manager to kind of supervise, but it comes down to the culture with that. But yeah, if you're with a small company, a team of 10 people, and somebody's not pulling their weight, it's very apparent. It's like, I've asked this person 3 times to do this, and they haven't done it yet, type of thing.
Well, experience on the job also means a couple different things, right? Like there's these core security skill sets, right? Maybe a bunch of non-technical patterns and then like some technical knowledge that supports that and all that. And that's fantastic. But also what I think someone right out of school, even if they have a security degree, they don't know how to be an employee yet either, right? And I actually think security is one of those jobs that it requires this. Different positions are different, but many of the jobs require some level of interpersonal and communication skills in addition to the technical skills. And if you've never done the work thing really before in a corporate environment or professional environment, there's actually this whole other layer of learning you have to do at the same time that could potentially be super challenging, right? And so I actually think the people that I have hired that had low to no security experience, they came from PMO or not-for-profits or things like that. And so they actually had all the how to be a great employee stuff nailed down. And that was oh, okay, I just need to show you some security stuff. Right. And that was easy.
They understood how the world works a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
I was working with a client earlier on, and they have a culture of meetings. 9 to 5 meetings, wall to wall, and everything like that. And I was on board and doing a long-term project, and I block off my calendar. When don't schedule stuff during this time and everything. And of course, the invites go out. And I had a Friday blocked, and they threw it on. And I did not, I declined it. I gave a reason hey, I'm at a conference today, and, I can't do a meeting. While I'm at the conference, I get the ping, why aren't you on this meeting? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I declined it, and
Yeah.
it was blocked too before it was scheduled. Like, but again, go to like they didn't check free busy, or they didn't care, type of thing. And then the decline and how it was somehow my responsibility,
Yeah.
go into like, there's an etiquette there, it's an underlying etiquette to that,
So are you saying that's attributed because that person didn't have experience with like the way things ought to work?
or didn't care, type of thing. But we have a normal etiquette, like you check their free busy,
Right.
you try to avoid lunch, you try, there's
Sure.
you don't schedule stuff at 4 o'clock on a Friday. These are my etiquettes,
Right.
But insecurity is one of those things. It typically makes things more difficult in some way, shape, or form, right? It adds friction intentionally,
Yeah.
right? It can solve some things, but that's a bunch of different conversations. But if you're in that position where you're like, hey, I need to slow down the business a little, or make sure people are doing things safely, or tell someone, no, you just can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
It helps if they don't hate you for a whole bunch of unrelated reasons already,
Right.
like
Yep.
setting up meetings on Fridays or whatever, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, good. So as we wrap up this topic, and could we give some advice? And the advice is, if you're going into college or you're coming out of high school and you want to get into cybersecurity, those are probably two different answers. If you're going into college for cybersecurity, you just got accepted at one of the great programs. What should you be doing along the way that makes you hireable, or somebody wants to hire you as you're graduating?
Network. So go to the conferences, all the cheap conferences, meet people, invite them to LinkedIn as soon as you meet them. Start to get your network kind of up there and everything. If you graduate or come to graduate, or just you're not looking for a job and you've met somebody and you've had a good impression on them, you will get an interview.
Yeah.
Whether you get the job or not would be another thing, in the interview. But you will get an interview through relationships, with that. So that's one thing I always tell, with mentors and graduates is like, just getting a degree is not enough. You got to work to get those, relationships, and conferences are perfect for that.
Yeah.
Just introduce yourself. Hey, I'm give you a little bit of backstory. Could I hit you up if I have any questions? Like, look to them and say, hey, I'd love to get your perspective on the security industry. Where do you think I should be focusing on? And just kind of build a relationship from there.
That's great. What do you have to add?
I would say, and I don't think there's anything I could say that would be more important than networking, so I'm going to throw that out first. But as a secondary thing, I would say find a secondary topic of focus that you also study or that's important to
Fallback
you.
plan.
No, but to relate things, right? So like I did like IT and security stuff plus accounting stuff. So one of my superpowers right out of school was, oh yeah, I can talk to all these finance people and their ERP, about security because I speak that language too, right? And it could be anything. It could be health, and now you're talking to doctors. It could be whatever. It could be hospitality, and you're talking to hotel owners. Like,
That's a fantastic idea. I didn't even think of that one.
it's just find a secondary domain of study so that if you really want to do security, you're like carving out an initial niche, and you don't have to stay in that niche, but you're always going to fall back to certain relationships in that niche or patterns that you get from that niche. Because I'll also say, every time I like find myself thinking about something new, I'm like, oh, how does this apply to security, right?
Yeah.
And so you'll do that too as part of these other studies. So that's what I'd say. Study a secondary thing, even if your core interest is security.
Just real quick on that. One of the things that I thought was really cool, it was last year or the year before, Coinbase was hiring a whole bunch of people, and they had a number of things that was guaranteed to get you a job. And one of it was if you were anyway titled with chess. You like, if you're a FIDE master, international master, or
That's
obviously
cool.
grandmaster, they're like, if you're anyway titled, you get an interview. Like we want to interview
Like how you think.
It's like, and that goes to your like secondary skill, like, and that's a very analytical cut. You have to study for that, type of thing. You have to look at both sides of the, the fence to, come up with a plan. So they're taking that skill and saying, hey, these people have a base of that, and maybe they work well, in the crypto industry.
What's yours?
Yeah, well, I'm still fixated on what you said because it ties back to something I was thinking about earlier as well. But it's you don't just do security because it's a thing to do. Right. You do security because you're securing something What is that something?
Mm.
And that's what we're getting to. And so some of my advice today to that person was, it's just like computers now. Everybody needs to know how to use computers. So I think as people come out of school, everybody should understand core concepts for security. What was it 50, 60 years ago? If you wanted a letter typed, your secretary would listen to you talk about what it would be. The executive wouldn't sit down in front of a typewriter and type it out. But now executives sit down and type their own stuff.
Yeah.
And so, because now everybody needs to know how to use computers. So I'm seeing everybody needs to understand core basic security concepts and then apply it to their area.
Yeah.
But the other things I would say that if you're starting college now, several things I would do to be hired coming out with a cybersecurity degree is, one, before you get to college, set up your LinkedIn and start bragging about everything you're doing. That means you have to do some things to brag about.
Right.
So don't just go to the conferences, but I tell people, just submit to a talk. Eventually, you might get a talk there. You'll find the right venue.
Yeah.
Get up on stage and speak about something. What do you speak about? So I was listening to a different podcast today, and they were talking about, writer's block. And people have these things, they just don't know what to write about. That's because they're trying to sit down to write, intentionally to write. No, go do something that you think is interesting, and then write about that, because people
AI
like you
defeats writer's
will
block
do
now,
that.
though. Like giving you an outline to write about something and it'll give you, all the bullet points there.
Oh, sure, but still, a cool
or even
concept.
talk about something that stumped you, and then now you're past being stumped, whether you succeeded or failed, and then write about that.
Right.
Yeah. In fact,
do a talk about it.
Yeah. I saw a BSides Harrisburg talk where a gentleman, he was pretty new and everything, but he talked about how he learned and shared that out on LinkedIn and how it got an audience.
Is that the
and
car hacking one?
No.
Oh,
not
a
the
different
car.
one.
Yeah, it was a
okay.
different one and everything. And it was like really cool. He said like I came at it as a novice, but I shared my experience. He went into did some like bug bounty stuff for a bunch of different websites and everything, and talked about how he got stuck and how he got past some stuff and how he did a number of things, which led to other networks, which led to eventually his career into the industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you talk about some things. You go to the meetups and the networking, again, and you start logging all this stuff. So if you're an interviewer and you're looking at two different candidates, they both have 4-year college degrees in cybersecurity. During college, one of them interned at a bunch of places, wrote some papers, got published on whatever, because it's not difficult to get stuff published. You can self-publish. Has a couple recorded talks. All of a sudden, you have that person and the other person who just has a great degree.
Right.
What are you going to hire?
I'd actually throw in a wrench into that. You got somebody with a college degree just with that, and somebody with no college degree with all that stuff.
Absolutely. That's why I clarified, because I knew that you would go there. And I would 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
You know what it sounds like, too? And I've never thought about it this way before, but it's almost like two kids in art school, right? And one of them's building their portfolio, and the other one, whatever, they're throwing it out or burning it, right? And they get to the end of art school, and they're like, oh, you want to be an artist? Okay, why would we hire you? Like, here's all my stuff. Here, I'll show you all my stuff. And the other one's like, I can draw you something now.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want?
I'm pretty good.
Yeah, that's really good. So the concept of build a portfolio,
Build a portfolio,
network, and document your portfolio in your LinkedIn, because that's what all the business people are going to look at when they're doing hiring.
Yeah.
Cool.
And have a secondary thing.
And
secondary thing.
learn a secondary thing.
Yeah. I think that's
cool. I like that. So here we plugged BSides a little bit. Let's officially plug BSides.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
So I think this might come out before BSides, but BSides is on July 12th at the Rivers Casino. We have a number of people who are organizers. We'll have to get you hooked up to be an organizer one day.
No. I've talked a number of times, but no.
Did you submit a talk this time?
I run the lobby con.
Okay,
I make sure.
What if there's a social chair position?
I make sure everybody's behaving in the lobby.
I've never seen somebody go to more conferences and never see a talk.
Yeah, but
I'm just kidding. You've seen some. Have you submitted a talk?
I haven't. No.
Talks submissions closed last week, and I know I was just reviewing a couple of the CFP submissions, and some I was looking at were AI related, respect to some open source testing tools and how to do like prompt engineering security.
Okay.
There's some talks I looked at that were good for developers, so your hardcore developers.
Oh, nice.
And I was reading this thing, and I'm like, well, that's a little bit above my coding level, so I'm sure people will understand it. But I was on a verge. And then there was some hardware hacking, including cars and medical devices in the ones I've read.
Oh, okay. That's a good group of diverse.
I only looked at 10 of them, and I think there were like 20 to 30 submissions, maybe more.
Okay. That's a lot of submissions.
Okay.
What's the...
Cool.
Yeah, is it like 15, 20? How many are you accepting?
3 tracks.
About 16.
16, yeah.
Yeah, about
16.
2 tracks of 8.
That's right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So did you see any other topics that jumped to mind in the submission?
I think maybe we saw some very similar ones.
Okay.
I think there were a couple less technical, more like governance ones that I
saw
saw
some
as
of
well.
those too.
Okay.
Yeah. And there were a couple even sort of like entry level 101 things that I think were really good.
Oh, really? I didn't get to see those.
Yeah, there were 1 or 2 of those that I
So there's
saw
something
as
for
well.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. So BSides starts around, show up around 8 in the morning and prepare to go. If you're like us, you might prepare to go until 2 a.m.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cookie table.
Should definitely go.
Yeah. Cookie table was a major topic recently too. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. If you're from Pittsburgh, you know what a cookie table is.
At the weddings.
And if you're not, come find out.
Yeah.
It's not a big mystery.
It is what it sounds like.
It's in the name. All right, so
What's next?
yeah, what's a good topic here?
I don't know. We threw around Microsoft started to do some stuff where they started to create these positions, deputy CISOs, and are tying them to a lot of development. And the CEO made a statement that security is going to be above everything else for priority. I read that in one of the articles. You suggested that article. What comes to mind?
Yeah, so I mean, just to kind of set up the little bit of backdrop here. So, Microsoft got breached, their email servers were breached and everything like that. And then CISA decided to basically investigate them because Microsoft does a lot of government work, and
in agencies specifically, there were agencies that were notified that those emails were being read.
Exactly. So there was an investigation, and then CISA basically came out and had a report that basically said, Microsoft, do you know security? Type of thing. It wasn't good for them, so they were scrambling to, kind of respond to that. But I thought it was really interesting to your point where, they made a number of announcements. And one of the things that really caught my eye was that they're tying performance compensation to security
Bonuses,
for their executives and everything, which they didn't say specifically what that was kind of left up to there. But I thought that was interesting from a compensation perspective. One, I thought, how are you going to measure that? That would be fairly hard to get specific metrics. I mean, you have to get very specific if you're tying dollars to it. Like, is it you get 0, you get money, you get like one incident on you get less. Like, how does that even work? From that perspective. And then 2, I was talking with some other executives, and they were saying like, yeah, if it's tied to my bonus pay, I'm definitely making sure I'm hitting those marks.
Right.
Type of thing.
The compliance part of me says, oh man, that could go wrong in so many ways, right? Because to your point, like, how do you quantify it? Okay, is it based on incidents? That's kind of a weird metric. Is it based on like the 1 to 5 score that you get from consulting agency on this framework that you're supposed to align to? Okay, well now you're setting up some very bad feedback loops and unintended consequences, because guess what? Now my money's tied to XYZ, where maybe I would initially be like, okay, well, I'm going to kind of leave this be fully independent, right? Well, now I might be interested in exerting some pressure to make sure the score is what I want it to be. Right? So there's a lot of like conflict of interest alarms that start going off in my head when it's like, hey, your responsibility is security, but also you're going to get measured on how good the security is. It's like, well, you should actually get measured on how honest you are about the security is, as opposed to like that number. So maybe it'll be measured different ways, but if it's done poorly, it could be really bad.
Right, and I just thought of something like one of the things with this compensation. What if you're low on resources and you said like, I don't have the resources to do what you need me to do? How many times have
Well,
business leaders say that, and then they get popped anyways, or with that, it's like. But I told you, like, I didn't have the resources to do what you wanted me to do. Where does that even come down?
Yeah, well, what? So here's a quote from the article. And Nadella hinted the changes last week in the company's quarterly earnings call when he said the company would be putting security above all else before all other features and investments. So to me, that's a way to begin to address that
What does stock do for that?
constraint. What's that?
What does stock do for that?
Well, I don't know.
I'd be curious on what investors actually thought of that.
It could be an investor thing, or it could just be just like competition. Okay, we're going to ramp up features faster, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious that if they're not pushing out features, is from an investor standpoint, did their stock go up or down or not anything?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
But I would hope that did the stock even take a hit? How much did the stock take a hit when there was the incident?
I don't know. Yeah. But I remember years ago in at ShmooCon, somebody did a talk, and I think the name was like "Breaches Are Good for You," and everything. And they basically did kind of a historical analysis of mainly the stock market and with that, and they looked at major breaches and where they were prior to the breach,
I know what you're talking
where
about.
they got hit, and then a year out, and most of them fully recovered, if not more, from where they were at.
DSS, it was the shoemaker.
DSW.
DSW.
DSW, Target, like there was a whole bunch of them that had major breaches, and a little bit later, with that. Who was it? Troy Fine just did a post when United basically came out and said, "Oh yeah, like they got basically our entire database, like 1/8 of Americans were compromised or whatever the number was. I forget what it was." And they announced this on a public call, and their stock went up that day.
Oh, that's very interesting. Well,
yeah, it was like,
they're about to solve a bunch of tech debt.
fact check me here, but didn't the CEO of MGM say that their huge breach was not even material in his mind?
Right. The Target one as well. I remember a million years ago, it feels like, the big Target stuff. There were spirited debates about all this.
Every time you say Target, you have to drink.
but very much was like it was like a mark my words, right? Their stock's going to be recovered in a week, and it was. So yeah, but anyway, yes, please. But my fear with that, like I think the intention is good, but like many other things, if the execution is poor, it could create some really bad.
Yeah. Well, here's how they framed that: security executive compensation on progress toward security goals. They're going to install deputy chief info security officers in each product group and bring together teams from its major platform and product teams in engineering waves to overhaul security.
Yeah.
So
it sounds more development and into their products.
It can still go anyway. Like progress towards goals, you're going to quantify it. There's going to be numbers. It's going to be on slides, and if you don't hit a thing, you don't get a bonus. Again,
that's workable in any company for any goal.
But it's going to be cultural at the end of the day, whether or not it works well.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, my big takeaway is I like it. Financial incentives drive behavior, and that's good. And I also like dedicating extra people. So I don't know if they had these deputy CISOs before, but putting them in place and putting them into these groups.
I don't think they would. Well, they could have announced it if they did already have it. But
it's kind of surprising to me if they didn't, because most super large organizations I've worked with at this point absolutely do. And they call them different things.
Yeah,
right?
BSOs.
Or BSOs. Exactly. But it's like, look, you're the security chief in this area because it's one of the ships in the fleet, and we need someone watching this in this specific space.
Yeah.
So if they didn't have it before, kind of interesting actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a good topic. What do you want to hit on next?
So what do we do? You're new at a company, head of security.
Yeah.
What do you do first, or what do you do? Like, just start off with a game plan and everything. I thought about this a lot.
Yeah, I have these conversations a lot.
Yeah, right?
I mean, Oh, you might as well. In the I didn't mention faculty of IONS as one of the things on the resume now, but the ask an expert.
Both eyes. You're
always getting into there.
Like I'm on the friends and family faculty plan.
There you go. And so you jump into these conversations, but you gave it some thought. What were your thoughts?
So first off, you got to figure out what you're dealing with, going on. Actually, ideally, you should figure that out before you accept the job, type of thing. There's a lot of cultural things that will shoot you in the foot, coming in. So as best as you can, those are the type of questions, if and when, I don't know if I ever take another head of security, position at a company, but in the few that I've had, those are the questions I try to get from a cultural perspective. Like, would I be able to do anything there? And it's a continued conversation. But, first thing first, or, kind of in combination, you got to figure out your current state. What are you doing? Where are you at? What's your footprint? How are you doing everything? From vulnerability management, patching to compliance, if it's related, all that stuff and everything. Second, and you can't understate it, and I think a lot of people fail at this. You got to build the relationships. One of the things I always did was I made a slew of meetings for executives. And I've come in to say, where are you experiencing pain points from security? How can I help you? Here's my philosophy. I don't say no. I'm here to help the business. I'm going to tell you how. I'm not going to tell you no. Type of thing. And you start building that rapport. To a lot of different people. I also in the times I do give advice, to new people with GRC and stuff of that nature, is don't be afraid to bribe. I know that's probably a bad thing, but a gift here and there or something like that builds a good bond relationship, So if somebody likes bourbon, give them a good bourbon. I've done times where if people are feeling under the weather, I'll send them a gift basket with soup and all that stuff and everything. Like, those little things go a long way when you need to get something done, type of thing. And that's almost more important than what you're dealing with, because the roadblocks that we face from a security perspective is often the people in process, not the technology. Like, the technology we can figure out and all that stuff. There's usually cheaper ways or ways that you can kind of deal with it, type of thing. But when you get an uncooperative person or, a roadblock and you need a way around, it's usually getting to somebody to say, can you help me out here, type of thing.
Yeah.
So.
I have a very similar in a lot of ways, maybe framed slightly differently, but there's 4 key things top of mind, immediate. And it's meetings with all the leaders, right? Like peers and or various bosses, dotted line or straight line, to say, and it's part of, getting the feel of things, but also building the relationships. 2, same thing with the team, right? Before I even start digging into controls and compliance frameworks and looking at these reports that came before me and stuff like that. Look, man, I want to shake hands with everybody that's on the team. Because that's going to give me the best. That's going to give me the best sense of, again, building relationships, but also are we good or are we not good, right? Because if there's a couple jokers in critical positions, I'm already a little nervous about what might be there. And maybe they surprise me, but I know there's going to be some places I want to pay attention. So 2 relational things, but leaders and then people. And then from a other tactical perspective, the 2 things I always hit first. And a little this is steeped in when I was in Del Monte, because there's a huge seasonal workforce. So we had to figure out pretty good ways to hire and then release 16,000 people every season. So I got kind of good at access management.
Season, getting the crops.
Yeah, we call it pick and pack season. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it.
Exactly.
Okay.
But it's paid dividends. So what I typically do from a tactical side then is it's access. I get my arms around access management and how that works almost immediately. And if it's clean, great, I'll move on to somewhere else quickly. But that's typically always the first domain. Because also then when you're talking about the ability to bribe people or just stop bad stuff, people are plugging stuff in the network you don't like. All right, well, I figured out access management so I can get id of shadow IT. It has all these good second order impacts. And then the second thing is finances, right? I dig really deep into the IT and or security finances depending on the structure of everything and go, okay, where's the money going? Where should it be going? Because ultimately, again, with those relationships with the leaders, and getting wins quickly and stuff like that, if you can solve a couple things or start to utilize some of your resources more efficiently right away, it's going to just help you do things down the road. So to me, it's always shake hands with everyone above you, shake hands with everyone that's working with you, do the access stuff, do the finance stuff, and that's like a pretty good 90-day plan.
I like that.
Yeah.
I really like the access management piece as your first
It's always my
technical
first
piece to hit in on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're basically doing a risk assessment of the access management part.
Yeah.
I was going to start with you need to do some kind of risk assessment.
Yeah.
As you start going in, part of the risk assessment, you're kind of doing it all along. So when you're talking to all the leaders, you're trying to get a sense of what could break. I was talking to somebody who came in and helped me probably 10, 11, 12 years ago now, and they just went around and said, let's go talk to the execs. It was for a pen test, and it was more than a pen test, and they started looking at it and saying, well, let's go ask them, what is the one thing that can happen in this company that shuts it down?
Yep.
And let's start reverse engineering from there.
I would say, what's your absolute worst Friday night / Monday morning look like?
And why did that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. So risk assessments, I like that. And then if you think about frameworks, I'm just a huger fan of ISO 27001 than I am maybe of some of the other ones. They're all good control sets. Like CISA is great control set.
It focuses on this continuous improvement.
That's exactly why.
Yeah.
And so the first thing you do is, you understand, what do you care about and who cares about it and what's the scope they care about and what's in it. And then now let's figure out what kind of risks you have with it. And as soon as you can, start setting up. So my first step is implement a blank risk register if there's not one already.
Right.
And get that in place and then start populating it with, and I like your idea of focus on access.
Yeah.
Figure that out. And then start taking it to the leaders that you're meeting and saying, oh, so your area is this, right? You're responsible for this line of business. Well, I was doing some access management review and I'm finding some weaknesses in the way we do this. And it's related to this process that happens. And even some of your people on your team have to sign off on these things.
Yeah.
How do we shore that up? I mean, I can help you remove some of this friction and to start, making things more efficient, winning some friends and fixing problems all at the same time and putting it in there. Now, selfishly, I would say that all three of us would have the same thing. If it's not us getting the job and it's you should bring us in, because the best thing that I ever did when I'm getting started is don't go it alone. Is who can come and give me an objective view, because the moment you're in the company,
Right.
you're not as objective as you are when you're looking at it from the outside.
Right.
And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to, and also the sad thing about that, a lot of your execs won't listen to inside people. They could complain to the moon that hey, we need to do something about this. And somebody outside writes a report about it oh, why didn't we do this yet?
Yeah, there was a consultant I was working with years ago, and they kept saying, I keep getting asked by the companies I'm helping, why can't we hire you to come in? He goes, because the moment you hire me, I will be no longer the smartest guy here. You will think I'm the dumbest guy here.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was pretty funny.
That's a good lesson for the anyone that might be listening that's taking that college advice, what to do in college. Just realize that, one of the hardest pills to swallow is, even once you get really good at security, right? If you're on the outside, right, you're going to have a lot more airtime and a lot more visibility, talking to companies about their security than if you're on the inside trying to evangelize security. It drove me nuts when I was at Del Monte, telling people things, and then I'm internal saying the same things, right? But you need that secondary opinion, and then you're external again, and it's the same thing. So it's a good lesson.
Yeah.
I'll pick a point on you. So when you say do a risk assessment, are you talking about actually looking at likelihoods of threats and impacts into that? Or are you doing it more from a control perspective? And I think it depends on the size of the company.
Right. I would say that there's no right answer. And I know you had another topic about should you do risk assessments.
I'm opinionated on this. But
And
we should spend a whole episode
Yeah.
on this, 'cause that's what
We won't go
we're
into
coming
that
toward
one.
the end of this one, but
Well, just to quickly answer your question, I think having so I'm starting to measure anything in cybersecurity to get my head much more around. You got that book over there?
No,
Yeah.
there's a bookshelf behind you.
Yeah, I'm not putting it.
Yeah. Get my head around how to continue to improve on the way I quantify things.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an ISO 27001 news group, and one of the folks in it, and it's a Google group, and one of the people in it makes a great argument for not getting that specific, at least until you're a little bit more mature.
Yeah.
Right.
And the reason,
yeah, and that's, I guess, kind of my point, you know.
that's exactly, because the reason is, if you would spend 1,000 hours of collected time coming up with something that is super detailed and at the level of like one of your large worldwide insurance companies' level of detail for analyzing risk, or
and they're not doing a good job patching.
You take a week,
it's just going to echo that,
and figure it out, and you give it. Sure, you can't like add high, medium, and apples, right? So they don't make sense, but you can start to have a conversation of understanding what is riskier than another thing, and at the end of the day, is it going to drive a different major change or major output?
Right, and that's where I agree. Risk assessments do help when you get to a point where you're mature enough and you're trying to decide: do we invest in a new EDR solution or a WAF, or you know, where is the best place for our dollars to go? You know, into there, a risk assessment will help kind of flush that out. But if you're not doing the basics, like and it may be like a gut, you know, risk assessment at that point, but we all know if you're not protecting against phishing attacks, you're not educating users, you're not patching, you're not protecting your border, you're going to get popped eventually, you know, type of thing. You'll probably still get popped if you do all those. Like, that should be your kind of first goal, you know, and once you get to a good spot, then you can start divvying up where's our dollars best to go, you know, type of thing.
I always want better language in the risk space, right? Because like the risk word is like way overloaded, and you probably both see this with different clients. We see it all the time where like someone will say, I want a risk assessment. It's like, okay, well, what do you want? Like the academic risk assessment? Do you actually need a controls assessment? Do you want a pen test? Like, because risk is a whole bunch of different things, and depending on the context, it's specific. So I think our language is really poor here. When we're talking about a generic risk assessment, I don't know if they still use it, but there's this thing that E&Y had a long time ago, and they framed it the what could go wrongs, the WCGWs. And I always loved that for like the initial risk assessment or the high level thing. It's like, look, I just need to know what could go wrong.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. And what are the worst things that could go wrong? Okay, top 10. Great. Let's focus on those.
Well, that's a really good point. And when we do a more detailed risk assessment, the first thing we actually do is a threat assessment.
Exactly right.
And that's what can impact you.
Yeah.
But
So,
well,
that's good. We should do a whole
thing on
session
risk.
on risk assessments and
talk about
why.
some of the methodologies and all the frameworks and everything like that.
And why to throw them all away and just do something that works.
Yeah, right.
For sure. Love
Cool.
All right.
Is this a wrap?
Yeah, I think this is a wrap.
All right.
This was a good hour and everything. So
cheers.
Thank you, gentlemen, for doing this. Thank you, audience, for joining us. This will be released here, and we're aiming to do a once-a-month podcast, so join us next month as we dive into a number of these topics and everything. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment, you know, if you really enjoyed it or if you have any other topics or questions for us. And that's a wrap. Thank you all. Bye.
You know what I think we should do on a camera? You can clip this part back in since we're all still mic'd and everything on. Is we should.
How about whiskey review with each episode?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Something like acknowledge what we got sitting here because, and then why we picked it, the name of it, and stuff, and a few.
I think it's a great idea. I think
the name, Kentucky Straight Bourbon, and guided by wisdom and crafted with knowledge.
Where was it made? I like that. Distilled in Kentucky, bottled by Kentucky Owl, and I'm gonna butcher this name. I apologize for everyone who lives here and nearby here. Lacassine, Louisiana. Yeah.
So this one I bought down in Kentucky. They don't have it in PA here and everything. Hopefully that's not illegal.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, From a notes perspective, does it say? Oh, okay, it's 91, almost 91%. Yeah, 90.8% proof.
This is great. I love this.
Yeah, it's nice and smooth. Yeah, good caramel notes and everything.
And for anyone who's listening just for the whiskey review, I would describe us as people that drink a lot of whiskey, but know a moderate to low amount about whiskey.
Oh, okay.
I think Justin knows more than.
I definitely
drink a lot.
The moderate category for sure.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah, we're not distillers, and we're not the guys that have like the bourbon channels that are 50 gazillion videos deep. That have distilled since they were 2 years old somehow.
Yeah, in the hills of West Virginia.
Yeah. Hey, well, cheers again.
Yeah, cheers, guys. This was good.
This is great.